Hey, this is Clay and Beth Morgan here again for, what do we call this? Morgan Minutes, right? That's what we call this thing. So today we're going to be talking, well, for this month actually, for April, we're going to be talking about some different subjects about family life, marriage, children, and not just ours, but as a culture and things we're seeing today. So that's going to be for the month of April. So we were talking about what we would do for April. And we wanted to you have been seeing a lot of things with children and anxiety, and even I'm beginning to hear, and I don't want to sound like completely ignorant because I've been hearing this for a while, that they're saying now in America, it's not the COVID pandemic anymore, it's mental health pandemic, like there's mental illness pandemic. And at first, whenever I hear things like that, I typically don't jump on the bandwagon. You see a lot of people just jump on the bandwagon and they start tweeting and getting on Facebook and talking all kinds of stuff. I usually just sit back and wait, because a lot of times, especially today, everybody just wants to be the first one to say something, right? We're very narcissistic in our ideology anymore. But I'll sit back and wait and watch. But I have been seeing that trend throughout the country. And I know I've had my own issues of anxiety. We've dealt with our boys. And you, being a nurse, being in the medical field, you've even seen an uptick in it, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go back a little bit and let's do it like this. So you dealing with me, because I feel like I've helped train you, to be honest. Because you first had to deal with me.
Right. Because
what was I, about 30-ish?
You were late 20s.
Late 20s when I started really having some trouble.
Right.
And you, I remember my first actual panic attack. Mm-hmm. In the car. Mm-hmm. After church. Mm-hmm. In our driveway. Mm-hmm. It actually started before we parked, but I finally got the car parked, and that's when it just hit me. And I know my side of that, so I know how I felt. And so anyways, during that time, the real quick version is I ended up locking my hands around the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. And it was like I was holding on for my life. And I felt frozen. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do anything. I could talk a little bit, and I just remember the kids being in the back, and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? I don't want to scare them to death, And I remember just getting out the words, I'm okay, right? Something like that. I'm okay. I mean, I was trying to let everybody know I was conscious, I was there, I recognized what was happening. I just didn't know what to do in that moment. So what was that like for you? Because that was your first experience, right?
Yeah,
That was pre-nurse. Yeah.
Well, I must have been in nursing school.
You might have been in nursing school, but it was before you was a nurse, for sure.
Okay.
Yes, because we just had Brendan and Carter at that time.
Okay, yeah. I must have been in nursing school.
And you had Haven your last year of nursing school.
I remember trying to go through the steps of, because I thought, is this a heart attack? Because you were holding your breath and you were like that. And I remember, oh my gosh, if I have to do CPR, what are the steps? And trying to go through that in my mind real fast. And yes, thinking about the babies in the back. And
because the only experience you've had with CPR up to that time was when we kissed. And if you used your tongue, that probably would have made it worse, right?
Oh my Lord, yes. This is Clay Morgan right here.
But anyway, so you're thinking, okay, I got to do CPR.
Yeah, I literally thought, is this a heart attack? Because you were holding your breath. We were in the midst of a serious talk about church things?
It was almost an argument.
See, I'm glad. I can't hardly even remember what it was about, but
I was very, during that time, you remember, I was very intense on some issues.
Yeah.
And things weren't happening right, and it was just really, really bothering me. And you kind of during those days didn't see it my way as much. And so I was trying to get my point across so you could see it my way.
I was always trying to play the middle ground of trying to keep peace.
Right. So so you said, now there's a reason we're talking about this. So you said that you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm going to do CPR. And I remember I calmed down. Mm-hmm. It took a while. Mm-hmm. And I remember having to literally, it was such a weird experience. I had to consciously focus on removing my hands off the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't just an automatic let go. It's like I had to really focus and let go. And I was so shaky after that, and I felt so weak. And that was a really weird experience. And then we went to Taco Bell, and we talked about things. And after that, we won't get into all this, but after that, I had a series of attacks. Mm-hmm. They came on a more regular basis for too long, to be honest. So,
see, I remember calling my dad, and I think we went to his house, and he talked and said, yeah, it sounds like anxiety and panic attacks, and kind of, because I think once you calm down, then I'm like, maybe this was because we were in the midst of a stressful conversation. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And
then at that point, anything that it was easier to trigger that stressor. And that's one thing that I've noticed as I've gotten older, and I'm going to go way ahead because I just taught about at church called Memorials of Truth. And I had read about a book of Dr. Caroline Leaf, and about the brain and how sometimes past memories, be it trauma, traumatic experience, things that made you anxious, it could have been years ago. But when certain things, certain smells, certain even sounds, or certain environments can bring that trauma back and trigger it. And I was experiencing trauma after trauma after trauma, and it was difficult for me because I didn't want to feel this way, right? Because I'm a Christian.
Right.
I have the Spirit of God.
Oh, yeah.
You can do all things through Christ, right?
Right.
And so what that begins to do, and then when you're in church and you hear people preaching about things like that, and you just need to pray more, you just need more faith,
you just need to give it to God.
You just need to give it to God, right? That's the big one. You just need to give it to God.
Rebuke it.
And I'm like, okay, I'm giving it to God. God, what are you doing with it? Because it kept being repetitive, and so it was a long journey. But what I've learned a lot in that experience, and I could go on and on and on about that. But the one thing that I look at this culture and I think, okay, how do we help? Because there's so many people out there that do have anxiety and do have chemical imbalances, and everybody wants to say we're made up of body, the physical, the soul, and the spirit, but the church has been, anyway, in my experience, very poor at addressing the physical and understanding the chemical imbalances in the brain. They want to make it all spiritual,
right?
When it's not always spiritual, right?
Right. I think growing up in church, it was just rebuke it, and especially when it comes to mental things. But yet, talking about diabetes or something like that, we wouldn't dare say don't take your medicine.
We knew God could heal you, but until God healed you, be sure to take your insulin.
Yeah, but make sure that God told you you're healed.
Right.
But so there's that line, and I think on how to help, you said that question about how do we help. I think the big thing is just talking about it, and that's sharing our story and what we've been through, and letting people know you're not the only one. That's what I found most, is letting people know you're not the only one that deals with this. I think we feel like it's such a hush-hush thing, and if you talk about it, oh my gosh, you have something really wrong, you're, a mental case, and nobody wants to be labeled that. But just say, look, I understand where you're at, and so many people deal with this. I think that is a big open door to really helping to talk about it.
Because I remember when I first started opening up about it, I began to realize more people had experienced that.
Yeah.
And so I'm no expert at it, right? So no doctor, but I have the experience of what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And one thing that was difficult to get over was because I've pretty much grown up in church. Ever since I can remember, I knew there was a God and I was supposed to do right. Mm-hmm. Right? Even when we didn't per se go to church all the time. But then I was 9 years old, I started actually going and attended regular since I was 9 years old. And so I'd been around the move of God. I'd been around the Spirit of God, the move of the Spirit, miraculous things. I felt the power of God. I knew God was real. I never doubted any of that. But again, what really, I was in ministry, supposed to be a preacher, right? On my way to the top, as they say, and that's another story. That's one thing that it was so detrimental to me to have everybody tell me how good I was and what I was going to be. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of stress too. Mm-hmm. And so when everybody was talking of how you're going to do this and you're going to do this, which I'm almost 47 years old and I ain't doing any of that stuff that they said I was going to do. So I don't know if they lied to me or what, but that put a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. And then when I started not being able to handle life, mm-hmm. I felt inadequate. Mm-hmm. And so there were times when I felt like I was having to carry this persona that I was this preacher, this leader within the church, mm-hmm. and yet at home sometimes I was a wreck. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know why I'm talking about it. I guess the reason why I'm talking about it is because I always think, how do we help this world? Because mm-hmm. this world is literally falling apart. Our culture is constantly being okay with things that are contrary to the Word of God. Mm-hmm. We're constantly passing laws that are contrary to the Word of God, and yet we still want everything to work out. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's not going to work out. As long as you go against the ordained order of creation, things aren't going to work out right. Mm-hmm. And I think that has to do with our anxiety also. Where, anyways, it's sometimes when I talk, I know we do this at home too. I'll be talking and she gets this look like, okay, wow. But I do so much want to help people, and I feel like I have a word to help people, a message to help people, to say you're actually okay, mm-hmm. right? You're actually okay. A lot of people go through this, but yeah, it was very stressful when I was breaking down, and at the same time supposed to be a so-called man of God. Mm-hmm.
I think I love, me personally, learning the physical.
I love you personally too.
Aww. Learning the physical and the spiritual side of things, and so our bodies are crazy. They can handle so much. And then your body starts to say, this is it, I can't handle it anymore. And it will start to, let you know, I literally am at my max. And I always tell people too, you can't, this isn't something that you can't control this part. So when your body goes into a fight or flight response.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going into a survival mode, and explaining, a lot of times saying your heart will speed up, you'll start breathing fast. You might get lightheaded because it's like shunting blood to your heart and your lungs because it's saying, I got to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
And then when you finally, your body says, okay, I'm safe and I can break down, or then the weakness and the shaking starts because the adrenaline's wearing off. And to let people know, this is the physical side of things. This is why your body's doing that. You can't control the fact that it went into the fight or flight. But to understand, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen next. And I'm going to be okay. But obviously there's things that you have to deal with, because your body's at that point of, I can't handle it anymore.
Right.
I can't. So it was like that next little thing that pushed you over to the edge, that got you there quicker, because you had to deal with the thing that was stressing your body
causing
out.
It, right? Yeah. And so on that note too, though, here's the other side of the coin. So as we're talking about this, my mind's going in this direction, but now let's go this direction. What about I'm sure there's people that would watch this and be like, yeah, but everybody has stress. You can't just stay in that type of mentality. You can't stay weak all the time. You can't. And I agree. So that's where, so what do you do if you're in that situation, right? Well, I know with me, you helped me out a lot, and other support people in my life helped out a lot in different ways, like added little props of support here and there. But of course you were my main pillar and anchor through all that helped me and walked with me through it. But also what I had to realize is, okay, I had to admit that this is where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Like, this is reality. This is where I am. Mm-hmm. Now what? Right? And because, we talk about faith, you have to have faith, and God can do anything. Well, if there wasn't anything wrong, or there wasn't anything to look forward to, you wouldn't need faith, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Faith is actually acknowledging where you're at, knowing that you can get past it, mm-hmm. right? Faith is acknowledging the reality of where you're at and know that there is hope on the other side. And so I know through the process of time, what I had to do is understand that this is how I was at the moment, mm-hmm. but I couldn't stay there.
Right. Because
when you stay there, that's what gets you locked up.
Yeah.
Right? That's what gets you in a psych ward, a mental health hospital, the ER, like you've seen. Patients have to come in. People turn to alcoholism.
Right.
People turn to drugs.
Right.
And I know in my case, so this is a good way to end this portion, I think. And then we'll start the next portion talking about what I'm getting ready to mention.
Okay.
I'm going to be suspenseful. So here's where, in my case, mm-hmm. and you know this, now some people watching me could be like, are you ready?
Yeah.
But people self-medicate, right, to feel better.
Right.
So they can feel better in that moment and relieve that tension.
Right.
My self-medication was pornography. Mm-hmm. And so when I would get this instead of I didn't want to break again. I didn't want to be tense. I didn't want to make your life miserable with my irritability.
Right.
And so I would end up turning to pornography in just a few minutes of pornography, and then which actually makes things worse later.
Right.
Because you find that temporary relief in that moment, and then you spend the next month hating yourself.
Right.
Because you're not the husband you should have been. You let God down. You let your kids down. You let yourself down.
Right.
Okay? It's a dark, dark hole, right?
Right.
I didn't want to be that person.
Right.
I knew that wasn't healthy. I knew that was wrong. I knew that wasn't godly, and that's not the man I wanted to be.
Right.
And so then we came to a point, though, where medication came into the picture.
Yes.
So
yes.
Let's stop on this for today.
Okay.
And let's let everybody know that on the next session, we're going to be talking about medications, anxiety medication, depression medication, kids,
okay,
my personal experience,
okay,
and medication. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Because I think that's something that we really, really need to address too, because let's just face it, there's some Christians out there that think if you take some medication that you don't have faith.
Right.
But if you had diabetes, they'd be okay with you taking your insulin.
Right.
So we'll see you next week and talk about that. Hey, so thanks for watching today, and hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed it, and we appreciate you taking your time. That's why we do this, just a little something extra for you, and hope you get something out of it.
And it matters to us what you think. And if you have any questions or things that you would like for us to talk about, leave a comment, please.
Yeah. We'd like to have a conversation with you in the comments section, and that'll also help us on where to go for the next sessions.